Hello and welcome to Dear Franny, the podcast where I have uncommon conversations about love, sex, relationships, and intimacy with fascinating people. I'm your host, Francesca. Today's episode is a great one. I talked to sex educator and cannabis goddess Ashley Manta, or as she's better known, the Cannasexual. Whether you have no idea what cannabis has to do with sex, or you're listening to this precisely because you do know what cannabis has to do with sex, you're going to learn a lot and maybe get inspired by Ashley's mission like I was. Please enjoy my interview with Ashley Manta. Ashley Manta, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And actually, it's funny because the first time we didn't actually meet, but the first time I saw you, heard you was last year. You were speaking on a panel at Soho House called Cannabis and the Future of Sex. First of all, I saw that event was happening and I was like, oh my God, what? What does that mean? I was like, I am definitely going to be there. And I went and you were on the panel and you were so amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I need to have a podcast because I want to have conversations with people like this, like you, Ashley. So I am just so excited to come from that moment of seeing you on stage and being like, oh my God, I really want to interview her, to actually making that happen. So I'm really excited to talk to you today.
That's so amazing. I never heard that story. Wow. Oh my God. And that was such a great panel. Lizzie Jeff was on that panel who I am obsessed with.
I am too. Yeah. You ladies blew my mind.
Thank you.
So you are a sex educator and you teach people how to, actually, why don't you describe, because you are the cannasexual, right?
I am the cannasexual, and according to Sexual Health magazine, who blessedly put me on the cover in January, I am America's High Priestess of Pleasure.
Yes.
Which is a pretty cool moniker, I have to say. I'm pretty pleased about that one.
Yeah.
So I am a sex and relationship coach and a sex educator. I've been doing sex education for almost 12 years now, which is bonkers to me. Like, it blows my mind when I think about how long it's been. And cannasexual is a word that I made up and then trademarked. And
so smart.
Thank you. I was really happy that I was kind of on top of that. And it refers to anyone who mindfully and deliberately combines sex and cannabis to deepen intimacy and enhance pleasure, whether they're solo or partnered. And I really kind of meant it as a paradigm, as a philosophy. Some people have taken it on as like a sexual orientation. That's totally fine. I fully support people identifying however they choose. And that wasn't actually my intention.
So what was your intention? Like, what does that mean for the average person?
Absolutely. So as a sex educator, I have been trained in communication, consent, boundaries, asking for what you want, sexual skills and techniques. And as far as I knew at the time when I really started Cannasexual back in 2014, 2015, no sex educators were talking about how to combine sex and cannabis with an eye on consent and communication and boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so I saw this need for someone who understood all those things, who could also learn the language of cannabis and help people who are curious or who maybe have been doing it for a long time but like aren't getting the results that they're looking for, to kind of shorten the learning curve and be like, okay, this is best practices. This is how you can really do it well. Anyone can get stoned and bone. Okay. That's been happening for way longer than I've been alive. You don't need me for that. But if you want to really do it in a mindful and intentional way, that's where my approach comes in.
Okay. Back when you first, came up with this and shifted to this focus, was it that were you a big cannabis user and you were trying to combine sex and cannabis? What was it about cannabis in particular that was such a draw for you?
Cannabis changed my life, and it was an unexpected vehicle for change because I was anti-cannabis until I was 23.
Wow.
22, 23, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. But like grad school, I was in my philosophy grad program, and like up to that point, I was raised as a dare kid in a very conservative, very Christian, very white neighborhood. Yeah. And there were a lot of really bullshit stereotypes about the kinds of people, and I'm using scare quotes there, who used cannabis. And I drank the Kool-Aid. I didn't know anything else until I got to college, and I was like, wait a minute. Something is amiss here, because this is not not right. And I met my cohort of philosophy grad students, and I was like, these people are studying philosophy and they get stoned. There's got to be like more to this thing than the stereotypes. And so I started to kind of open my mind and open my heart to cannabis, but that was still in Pennsylvania, which is was at the time a prohibition state. And so the quality was not, what I would say good.
A lot of like oregano back in those days.
A lot of oregano. And like, you had a guy that you went to and they either had weed or no weed. There were no cultivars. There were no products. There were no topicals. Yeah. There was nothing like that. There was a weed and that was it. And it was expensive. And you had to worry about, getting arrested because it was a prohibition state. And so it was a very like stressful relationship with weed early on. Even though I was like into it and I was enjoying it, I was like, I never even had a detention in high school, like so nervous. And that's like, which is especially bullshit because like, hello, white privilege. People of color have been sitting in jail for this plant for a long time. And like, Here I am, my white ass is like, oh my God, like what if something happens? Like, so ridiculous.
You were so naive.
I was so young and dumb. And like, I fully own that. And so I came out to California in 2013. I had medical cannabis for the first time. And it was such a game changer. I was like, oh, this is totally different than Pennsylvania weed. And the other piece of the story is I'm a sexual trauma survivor. And so I had pain with penetration for most of my life. From the time that I was sexually assaulted when I was 13 until like my late 20s. When I found Phoria, which is a THC-infused topical that you spray on your vulva 25 minutes before sexy fun times. And that was the first thing that allowed me to have penetrative sex without pain.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit, this is a game changer. Like this is legitimately changing my life. And there are no sex educators talking about this. And so I was like, okay, I had a background in trauma. I got started doing like rape crisis counseling, victim advocacy. I worked at Planned Parenthood as a reproductive health center assistant. So I had a lot of sexuality knowledge already. And then I was learning like toys and lubes. I started like using higher quality lube, like Sliquid, this company I work with that's awesome. And I started to like my game as a sex educator, as a person who was aware of accessories and things to make sex better. And then learning more about cannabis and understanding the social justice aspects of cannabis. And it turned into this big, like multifaceted thing that became my life. And I'm really grateful.
That's amazing. Wow. Cannabis really did change your life.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I love, and I'm so grateful on your behalf that you discovered cannabis as a way to heal your sexual trauma. And I imagine that there are a lot of other sexual trauma survivors who are coming to you now looking for that. So are you seeing that as something that's working for a lot of people?
I'm seeing cannabis being really helpful as a tool with trauma. I would never tell someone that like cannabis is going to heal your trauma or that like you can do that in lieu of therapy or, other kind of like helping profession modalities. If somebody needs to be on antidepressants or Xanax or they need to be in therapy every week or, any of those things, like that's all totally fine. And I celebrate that because, you are the captain of your own ship in terms of your healing journey. And so it's going to look a little bit different than other people's and that's cool. But like cannabis is such a powerful tool. And for me, it allowed me to stop using Xanax and get off of antidepressants. And it was so much more effective for dealing with my panic attacks. It was great for dealing with when I get anxious, my appetite evaporates. I lost 100 pounds in 2.5 years because I wasn't eating.
Oh, no.
So I named my rapist on the internet in 2015.
Wow.
And that set off this huge PTSD flare. And it was good. I stand by it. It was the best thing I could have done for myself. And I stopped eating for like a 1.5 years. And cannabis helped a little bit, but I wasn't using it. I was still learning how to use it best for that. And so things changed really quickly and I had to like learn how to be comfortable in my body again and learn how to be sexual again. And thankfully around the same time I met my amazing boyfriend who was incredibly patient and loving and willing to hold space like as I explored how cannabis could help me get in touch with my body again. And so like it was this really kind of perfect amalgamation of circumstances where cannabis became like a central anchor in my life and me stay grounded grounded and helped with a lot of the symptoms that were coming up, and also helped me find pleasure again. And so it's such a powerful tool, but it's not the only tool. Like, it's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all by any means. It's one tool in hopefully a robust toolkit of supportive professionals and books and meditation and grounding exercises and all sorts of things that survivors can use to like get embodied again.
That totally makes sense, of course. Yeah, whatever you need, whatever tools you need for your healing, that's what you need to go for. Your trauma is one thing that you talk about, but you also talk about pleasure. You are the High Priestess of Pleasure for a reason.
Yes.
So when people hear, and I'm sure there are going to be some people who are listening to this who are very cannabis friendly, and there are going to be some people who are listening to this who are not so. So like, what does this look like? So you mentioned Foria, which is the spray. I have it as well. But are you just talking kind of topical products? Like, how does cannabis and sex, like, what are the ways in which they work together?
Oh, there are so many ways. That's a great question. And the short answer is cannabis is a really versatile tool. And so I like to think of cannabis as an enhancer and something that helps address the things that get in the way of pleasure, connection, and intimacy. What are the things that typically hold people back? Pain, whether acute or chronic, anxiety, body confidence, shame, lots of that. And, what are the benefits? How does cannabis help? It can enhance tactile sensation. It brings more blood flow to the area when it's applied either like directly to a local area or even systemically, which is why your eyes get red when you smoke. It helps you tap into creativity. It helps you be more present and feel more in your body as opposed to feeling like dissociated or kind of stuck in your head.
Yeah.
It helps you connect with other people. The closest friendships that I have in my life are people that I've smoked weed with. And so the way that like taking a hit of a joint together or even just like dropping in after having had like a tincture or a small, maybe a CBD tea or something, like just something to kind of get into your endocannabinoid system and sink you in. And then you connect with your partner and you look into each other's eyes and you feel that yummy heart connection energy. And that there's something that unlocks there.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you because you said, endocannabinoids, you said CBD, you said not everybody knows even what you're talking about.
Yes.
So I just want to stop you just for a second and kind of back up. Okay, what is cannabis?
Cannabis is a plant.
I have my own, by the way. I got one recently, and it's so funny because I got it. This guy, he's like there on every Sunday in this park near my house. He has a little table set up, and he just sells little cannabis plants. And I was like, I'm just gonna get one. So I got one, and within a week, it had visibly grown, like visibly. And I was like, oh my God, this thing is growing like a weed. Oh my God, that's weed. That's it. I've had it. When I bought it, it was probably like 3 inches high. And I've had it for maybe a month and it's over a foot tall.
That's amazing. And also the first time I grew cannabis, I said the exact same thing. I was like, it looks like a weed. Wait a minute. I may be onto something here.
Oh my God. Exactly.
So the cannabis plant has 2 big offshoots, and most people think that that's indica and sativa, but what it turns out is that actually is less relevant than we ever thought. But there's cannabis that has less than 0.3% THC, and that's hemp. And then there's cannabis that has more than 0.3% THC, and that's the flower that you would buy in a dispensary.
Right. That's what we call weed.
That's what we call weed.
Yes.
And so a lot of people for a long time, including some people who are still in the cannabis industry, have been relying on these really antiquated terms of indica and sativa. And you'll hear people say things like, sativa is like buzzy and creative, and sativas make me anxious, and sativas keep me up all night. And indica couch, it's sleepy, it's heavy, it's body, it's blah, 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 blah. Turns out a few medical doctors have studied this, including like psychopharmacologists and people who are familiar with biology. And they're like, that has no basis in reality. There is no correlation at all between leaf morphology, which is what designates indica and sativa. Indicas are short, bushy leaves, and sativas are long, skinny leaves. This doctor, Dr. Ethan Russo, is like, there is no way to use those morphologies to remotely reliably predict effects of cannabis.
Okay.
What actually impacts the effects are the cannabinoids, which are things like THC. THC is the one that people think of most often, the one that gets you high. Although that's not,
one.
it's not necessarily true, but we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay. Ooh,
and
tell
then
me more.
Yes. And then CBD, or cannabidiol, is the one that's really good for anxiety. It's good for inflammation. It's good for pain. A lot of people take it because it's technically, you're able to ship it to all 50 states right now, because the FDA has not jumped in with their federal oversight, which is coming. Like, if you're like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to get into the CBD business. I just, wouldn't right now. It's not a good time.
Everyone, it's all over. And I mean, you can buy CBD products at the supermarket now. Like,
you can and 9 times out of 10, they are not going to have what they say they have in them.
Yeah, I don't trust that stuff.
Yeah, there's no oversight, there's no regulation, and so there's just a lot of snake oil on the market, which is unfortunate. THC and CBD are only 2 of over 100 cannabinoids that exist in the plant. When the plant grows out of the ground, all of these cannabinoids are in an acid form. So it's THC A, CBD A, CBC A. Like, it's all in its naturally occurring off the stalk form. It's acid. And so if you were to just eat a bud raw, pop it in your mouth, chew and swallow, which would not be a pleasant experience, but just like for the sake of the illustration, imagine that you did that, you wouldn't get high. The process that turns THCA into THC,
weed,
delta 9 THC, which is the intoxicating version, you decarboxylate. It's the process of decarboxylation, which, yes, is a lot of syllables. And all it means literally is you apply heat. And that the heat changes THCA into delta 9 THC, and that's what gets you high. However, if you were to cold extract cannabis, like the THC from cannabis, like without heating it, you can get it in its THCA form. And then you could do that as a topical, or you could do it as a tincture. There's a couple of tincture companies that use THCA instead of delta 9 THC so that you don't have that intoxicating effect. Okay. But you still get all the benefits of the THC, other which are numerous. Like, they've seen evidence of like tumor shrinking properties. Now, that's not to say that if you have cancer, you should just use weed and not go to the doctor. Like, go to the doctor. This is not medical advice. But it's good to know that it helps with that. And there's anti-nausea, and of course the euphoric effects of delta 9 THC is really powerful. So for folks with depression or things like that, like, there's a lot of potential applications. But the cannabinoids are only half the story, it turns out. The other half of the story are things called terpenes. Terpenes are the things that make plants smell the way that they do. And so if you peel a lemon and you know that like sharp citrusy scent, that is a terpene called limonene. And it is known to have uplifting euphoric effects, much like when you drink OJ or put lemon in your tea. Like, you get a little bit of a zip.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's that zest. It's like, ooh,
right? And so limonene also occurs in some cultivars or strains of cannabis. And so if you have a plant with high concentrations of limonene, you're likely to have more of those kinds of effects. Now, it's not guaranteed, because cannabis is also completely subjective, and it depends on body chemistry, mindset, setting. Like, there's so many factors. But being able to look at the terpene and cannabinoid profiles and like keep track of them to see what works for you and what doesn't is a really smart way to go about it. Because if you go into a dispensary and you're like, what's gonna, make me feel happy and creative and whatever, somebody's gonna be like, oh, well, just smoke a sativa. And like, that's a very limiting
way of looking at it.
Looking at it. Yeah. And God help you if you ask them to help you with like sex related stuff, because they just shrug.
Yeah.
They're like,
So in terms of that, so we've gotten really technical, which I find really fascinating. And I'm like, I'm still kind of processing everything you just said. I want to go back to something that you said before, because I think that there are probably people who are listening to this and they're going, well, I just don't buy that that weed helps you to connect to other people, because I think there is that image of the stoner who's so you know, who's so high and disconnected from other people because of that. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
And so I guess, how do you address that?
That's such a great point. And honestly, like, everything can be overused. If you do a whole, 20 milligram edible, you may be a jelly sandwich and not a particularly effective partner.
I would be unconscious.
Right? Sexy fun time.
For
so
18 hours.
Dosing is really important. And I'm a really big proponent of less is more. Like, use literally the least amount that you need to get the results that you're looking for. And that's going to require some calibration for folks, because a lot of people don't know what their tolerance is like or what it's going to do. And so what I tell my clients and what I tell people in workshops is get a new sample of something, whether it's flower or a tincture or a topical, try it on your own and then masturbate and notice what happens in your body when you do. And is this really good for sexy times? Or am I just sleepy and want to go to bed and snuggle? Is this making me think of like fantasies? Or is this making me be more like verbal and vocalizing more? Or is this making me nervous and like I can't focus? And then write those things down and actually keep a log. I designed a template for people because I want to make it easy for them. And if you go to my website, cannasexual.com, and sign up for my email list, you get this free template. And it goes through, what does it smell like? Where did you get it? How much are you taking? What time did you consume? In what method? What time did you start to feel the effects?
Yeah.
Here are some effects to circle. And it's so straightforward. It really, I think, helps people get to the essence of what is going to be the valuable information in that kind of fact-finding mission. And then they get to acquire their own trove of data that's really specific to their body.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Thanks.
I mean, I would do that, but I'm also, look, I live in California. I am like I am a cannabis user, and so I'm like I mean, I am totally your target audience. But for the person who's like, well, I don't want to do all of that. Like, I don't want to
risk it. Work.
Like, my question is for the people who think, okay, if I'm going to start experimenting with cannabis, bringing it into my sexual practice or even just into my lifestyle, right? What's a good starting point for people? Like, what do you recommend as the starting point? Because I think that for a lot of people, it's so intimidating to just think like, I'm going to be, do I have to be high all the time now? Like, got to drive. Like, I've got responsibilities. Because I think that's what people think. I think people think that we're high all the time.
That is not the case. And I totally understand them thinking that. So, cool thing about cannabis is that there are a lot of ways to consume it that don't get you high at all. There are topicals. You can take a bath in THC and you will not get high. That's not how that works. Yes. So I actually encourage people to do the bath route or an infused massage with massage oil or something like Euphoria, which is specifically for vulva owners. And so you put that on 25 minutes before sexy fun times, let it marinate. Because it's a marinade. It's not a lube. Lube is something that you use to decrease friction. That's like a sliquid where it's like water-based or silicone or hybrid. This is an oil that is designed to evoke a specific response and not just like to make your pussy wetter. Yeah. It would not be a very cost-effective lube if that were the case.
I know. It's very expensive.
It's not cheap. And I actually have a 10% off coupon code because I know that life is expensive and California especially. So I'll send you that to put in the show notes, but it's just coupon code Cannasex.
Awesome.
So that helps a little bit.
All that in the show notes. So,
but for sure, like you don't have to get high. Using non-intoxicating methods is a good place to start. And also, like I said, using it and masturbating, figuring out how it feels for your body. And then if you're like, I came really hard, or it was way easier for me to come, or my body just felt like electrified, because orgasm doesn't have to be the goal. It's just, It feels really great. And all I wanted was to have my partner next to me. That is a winner. Yes. Yeah. Good. Yes. Yay. And so then you get to go to your partner and say, sober, like this is a different conversation. Hey, I want to start incorporating cannabis into our sex life because I heard this podcast and Franny suggested it and she's really smart. And So what do you think about that? So I encourage folks to have a conversation or several conversations. This is all about informed consent. You have to know what you're agreeing to and both be agreeing to the same thing. So if you say, I want to try this and I'm a little bit nervous, so I want to make sure that we're only using a little bit and that we're checking in frequently, and this is what I want to try together. You know, maybe it's just hand sex. Maybe it's just massaging and making out. Maybe it's dry humping. Maybe it's anal, like whatever it is. But like say what's on the table and what's not so that you're very clear about what the parameters are, and then have a really frank conversation about this is what it's likely to look like if I'm in some kind of distress. This is what you're gonna see or hear if I am too high for some reason. So this is how I need you to take care of me if that's what happens. And have water on hand and have snacks and warm fuzzy things.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Water,
plan ahead.
Actually, that's important. That's important because cannabis can be very dehydrating.
Totally.
And that also affects your lubrication.
It
You're
can.
dehydrated. Yeah. So yeah, I'm all about making sure that I drink a lot of water because I definitely get dehydrated. That was such a great encapsulation of I think kind of exactly what I was asking. This is not about being stoned all the time. Mm-mm. This is about actually using this plant as medicine. Yes. Really. It's beyond, it's great to be able to get stoned, right? Mm-hmm. It's great to do that sometimes and to go into that place. And I mean, I know that is a place that is for me very creative. I love to be I am trying to solve a problem and I want to be really intentional about accessing the most creative parts of my brain, and I'm so intentional like that with my cannabis use. So I fully see all of the benefits of it, and it frustrates me. And then there's so much snake oil out there because everybody's hawking CBD this, CBD that. And I mean, I'm really glad that, listeners are going to have an opportunity to try Foria via your link. And there is a CBD only version of Foria. So
there
again,
is.
Even if you use a THC one, you're not going to get high. That's not what it does. What actually is the main difference, would you say, between those two, between the CBD and the THC in terms of a product like that?
There are a couple. So one is neither of them will get you high. However, if your partner goes down on you after you use the THC one, immediately after, they could get high because your pussy is now an edible.
Oh my God. Wow, that's an amazing quote. Oh my God.
So, you could say that your pussy got someone stoned, and that's pretty rad bragging rights, but again, with the informed consent thing. But the other main difference is that with their THC formula, it's just THC oil in MCT oil, which is a coconut oil that doesn't get solid at room temperature.
Okay.
The CBD oil is CBD along with a number of other botanical oils like cacao, peppermint, cardamom, ginger, cinnamon. And so their CBD oil tends to be a lot more sensation heavy. And so if you are someone who is sensitive to sensation, if the thought of a warming or cooling sensation in your genitals sounds like torture to you, do not use their CBD product. Okay. You'll hate it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you do like that sensation, because a lot of people with the THC formula were like, I don't feel it. I don't notice a difference until they get to the orgasm part. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to both have something where you started to feel the effects immediately and also use additional plant-based botanicals because they were using a hemp CBD. They wanted to bolster those properties with other plant-based compounds that would help create that synergistic effect.
Yeah, because it's all a formula. It's all a puzzle piece.
Yes, exactly.
What works with what. I bet there's some people who use both. They're I'm going to go for it all.
Oh, yeah. I certainly like them both together. And so THC is more of a vasodilator than CBD. So it's going to bring more blood flow to the area. I find that when I use the THC one, I feel a little bit more swollen in a good way. Mm. And the CBD one, I tend to feel more sensitive immediately. So there's pros to each, and it's really comes down to personal preference or geography, because if you live in Pennsylvania, you can't get the THC version. You can only get that in California and Colorado.
We're talking about vulva owners, which is great because, we are those, and so we should talk about us. But what about penis owners, and how do you talk a lot to men about how they can use cannabis in sex. And I don't know of any products that are geared towards men. I mean, though I'm sure there must be.
There are a few. One is like a jack off lotion, which I am very skeptical of, to be honest with you. But Foria also came out with a suppository that can be used either vaginally for people with cramps or can be used anally for any gender. Originally, they conceptualized it for people who like anal sex. They launched it during Pride in 2016. They were really trying to have a nod to the LGBT community, and that was cool. Yeah. And so it actually is great for anal. I've used it really successfully, and my boyfriend is pretty sizable, especially on the thickness side, and I was like petrified of his cock anally, and using a suppository really made a difference. And I've used it on guys that I've pegged, which is when you strap on a dildo and fuck someone with a prostate in the ass. And it's awesome. It's so much fun to do. The pegging part. It's super empowering. Yeah. Like, if you don't have a cock and you've never strapped one onto your body, like, do that for yourself, because it's really a fun experience. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I kind of understand why they swing these things around all the time. Like, it's actually a good time.
Oh my God. Yeah, I actually kind of understand that too. I feel like if I had a penis, I would probably want to play with it all the time too.
Right? Like, it's just there.
It's just hanging there.
It's just waiting to be played with.
It's just like, hi, I'm here. You can't avoid it.
Like, you should see what I do with pens when I'm bored. Imagine if I had a cock to play with. Like, jeepers. So, but back to pegging. Using that, because I know that some people have fear about pain with anal, and especially people who don't typically receive anal stimulation. And it's a really great way to relax the area without numbing, because numbing is not a good idea. Pain exists for a reason.
Right? Yeah, right.
It's your body telling you that something's wrong. So if it hurts, you're doing something wrong. You need to stop, use more lube, slow down, do more warm up, keep breathing, all of those kinds of things. And so I would certainly recommend that if somebody is going to be, receiving anal, that suppositories are a great option. And you can use some like intoxicating products, but I would go really minimal on that, just because you want to be clear enough to be able to give the person who's penetrating you feedback. Faster, slower, more pressure, less pressure, more lube, stop, pull out, whatever it is that you have to communicate. And like, anal is a dialogue. Anal is not just like, hey, I think we're just gonna slide this in and see what happens. Like, no, that's not how that works.
I'm like, just thinking about this, it's so funny that I knew about the suppositories. I never even thought about them being used for anal. I just thought about it for cramps. I was so this is a whole other, I'm like, I'm wrapping my brain. Like, it's not like I am some sheltered person, but just, I feel like every third person I interview, we have a conversation where I'm just like, I feel so boring and vanilla, and
you are awesome. And I'm so happy that you get to have conversations with people about like interesting things. Like, that's so fun. And I imagine that a lot of your listeners are probably in the exact same boat. They're like, is this even a thing? Who the fuck knew? Like, Jesus.
Exactly.
I was not adequately prepared for this.
Oh, well, thank you. So I guess, so we talked about Lizzie Jeff.
Yes.
And so Lizzie Jeff, for those of you who aren't familiar with her, is this amazing, she's like, the grand dame of pleasure or something. You guys are both royalty. And, I haven't been to any of her events yet, but but you guys have collaborated and you've thrown events together here in LA. What's that like?
Oh my God. Lizzie Jeff is a goddess. She is a rap priestess medicine woman and has the ability to curate vibes in a space like no one I've ever met. She has such a keen attention to detail. She's so thoughtful about the sensory experiences of her guests in every capacity. She's really focused on like plant-based diet and having like vegan food available at all of her events. And God, she's just such a delight. And she surrounds herself with these incredible beings who are so magical. Astamari is an incredible performer. DJ Moonflower is just this phenomenal DJ. And who else is just amazing? Bree is a massage therapist and Reiki practitioner. Felicia is a Reiki master healer. And like she brings all of these incredibly powerful women together. And men also, like they're not just women's events, but like she just draws people into her. And I cannot recommend her or her events highly enough.
Well, I'll also link to her Instagram in the show notes where I follow her. And she's, what I love about you do this too. I mean, actually, this is what I really, really, really appreciate about the cannabis space is that there are like all those amazing women that you just mentioned, you, of course. Everyone is it's so much about empowerment, like the messages. And I'm sure there's people who I don't know about that I would disagree, but the ones that I follow and the ones that I know of, it's all about just reclaiming your power within your body, your sexuality, your self-worth. Like it's all about self-love.
Yes.
Which is so cool. I'm like, whatever it takes, like if it's going to take a plant, like a weed that grows in the earth for you to feel better about yourself and to feel good about your body and to start to understand your worthiness, then like I'm all for it.
It's so good. It's so amazing. And like you said, it is an incredibly supportive, affirming community of especially women entrepreneurs who really like support each other and want to see each other thrive and lift each other up. Like it's such a powerful group to be a part of. I'm so grateful. Like legit, like 4 days ago, Lizzie Jeff FaceTimed me out of nowhere. I had no idea, like we didn't have a call scheduled or anything. And she just FaceTimed me and I answered and she was there with Astamari and she's like, I just wanted to tell you that I think you're fucking amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I love you so much. You're so sweet. And I was having a rough day. And like, it's just that kind of thing where like people will just out of the blue take time out of their day to reach out and be like, you're amazing and you're doing a good job and you're seen and supported and loved. And like, wow, what a concept.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. That's so, that's fantastic. So one thing that and we just touched on it, but you talk a lot about body image and body confidence, and which is so fantastic. And I'm so glad that you're having that conversation. What's sort of your advice for people who are struggling with that? Mm-hmm. How can they use cannabis to help them feel better about their bodies?
Oh gosh, that is such a great question because I have been 300 pounds and I have been 132 pounds and now I'm in the middle. And it's really, you can hate your body at any size and you can love your body at any size, which is the cool part. We live in a society that it's really hard to have a body at all, no matter what your body looks like. If you're thin and fit, people will be like, eat a cheeseburger. If you're curvier, then you're gross and disgusting and obese. If your skin looks a certain way or your hair looks a certain way or, textures and colors, and there's just so much judgment everywhere. And so what I found with cannabis is that it really helps me be more compassionate with my body and to help drown out those voices that don't belong to me. Those are not my voices telling me that I'm not enough or that I'm fat or that my stretch marks are gross or that I'm unlovable because I'm not a size 2. That's not my voice speaking. That is media. That is the bikini industrial complex. That is like,
oh my God. Yeah, I
the
know.
beauty industry. Like that is a lot of people who are trying to make money off of me feeling badly about myself.
It's just so patriarchally, I'm saying that word wrong, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Ingrained. It's because I was just having this conversation with a girlfriend of mine the other day. Imagine how much more we could have accomplished in our lives if we had not spent years obsessing about our looks and our bodies.
That's so real.
I mean, it's devastating to think about it. How much of my mental space in my life, percentage of the mental space in my life as a woman in our culture that's been occupied with thinking about my appearance and my body and feeling badly and wishing it was this or, like that, or it's crazy.
There's so much to that. And it exists on so many levels, right? Like I am an able-bodied cisgender white woman and I feel these pressures. Now, if you are a person of color, if you are trans, if you are non-binary, if you are disabled in any way, like there's all of these other judgments about you and your body and your sexuality and all of that. Like it's pervasive, and we have to acknowledge that there is like definitely levels, and I've got a lot of privilege in how I move through the world, and I try very hard to be aware of that and to own it and to dismantle it as much as possible. But like there's so many facets to the way that we are taught to hate our bodies, and so cannabis can really help decouple that thinking from what you actually believe about yourself.
Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? I mean, would you say like using THC and getting high, so you're getting to that place where you're mentally able to access like maybe a different thought pattern? Like, would you recommend, like if somebody says, I hate my body, what can I do? Like, what can I start doing now to try to feel more comfortable within it? Using cannabis.
Using cannabis, one of the things that I recommend, and it, you know, everybody's a little bit different, so there's not a one size fits all, but one exercise that I've suggested to clients is you do consume something that's going to be intoxicating, at least a little bit, whether it's smoking or vaping or a tincture. I wouldn't do edibles just because of the time commitment, but something that's pretty fast.
Are scary to me. They take me out.
They are scary. There's a lot of issues with dosing, and I could go on a whole edibles tirade, but get a little high, just a little, just enough to you're like relaxed but present, but not like out of your gourd, you know, can't focus, but just like that you feel that shift. And then take a couple deep breaths and just kind of land in your body. Notice what you're sitting on or standing on. Notice the way that the clothes feel against your skin, like get into your body. And then walk over to the mirror and look into your eyes. And notice what happens, and just breathe. Just like sit there and breathe with it. And can you muster up some compassion for the person who's staring back at you? Can you be kind? Say, wow, you're really awesome, and here are some awesome things about you. And then you take off your clothes and stand in front of the mirror and point out the things about your body that you like. And maybe it's just one thing. Maybe it's 5 things. Maybe it's 100 things. I hope it's like thousands of things. But whatever, if you can find even just one thing that is either neutral or positive about your body. It can even be neutral. It could be like, I have nice
normal
nail beds.
Bones.
Yeah, I have normal collarbones. I have collarbones that look typical and appropriate for my body.
And I don't mind my collarbones.
Yeah, I don't mind my collarbones.
I don't mind my collarbones.
Yeah, I don't mind my collarbones. That's great. Yep. The nail beds thing came from my dear colleague, Elle Chase, Lady Cheeky, who all her life her dad told her that she has nice nail beds. And so
I get
growing
the
up,
compliment all the time. It's like, I feel confident about that too.
So funny. I apparently don't have nice nail beds because no one has ever complimented me on those. But
I get a lot of manicures and they're always like, "Ooh, nice nail beds,"
nice
and I'm like,
beds.
"Thank you. I know it's my best feature."
She hung her hat on that for years. She was like, you know what? Whatever else they can say about me, I have really nice nail beds.
I cannot believe how much I relate to this story. I feel so seen right now.
That's
I need
amazing.
to meet her.
She's great.
So true. It's so true that one thing really can carry you, because this is crazy. This is such a random example, but I have my whole life, people have been telling me that I have nice nail beds, and I've been getting manicures regularly for a long time. So every time I get my nails done, the manicure is like, and it is something that, you know, like, oh yeah, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. Some people find me attractive. No, I have nice nail beds. Like, I feel very secure.
Professionals have confirmed that I have nice nail beds. Damn it.
I could gain 200 pounds. I am still going to have these nail beds. So
damn right.
I'm okay.
Phenomenal.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. This is an amazing exercise, and I really hope that anyone who's listening to this who can relate, and if you are a woman in our culture, I don't know how you couldn't relate to this even a little bit, because even, you know, everybody has a little something. This is an amazing exercise, and I love that it goes in stages. It's like, it's not just take your clothes off and stand naked in front of the mirror, because if that was the step 1, that could be really intimidating.
Very intense for people.
Yeah. I like that it goes in stages. And I like that it's centered around compassion, which is something that I talk about a lot in my coaching with my clients. It's like, we have to learn to have compassion for ourselves. Like, if you want to have peace, if you want to have happiness, if you want to have success and to keep moving forward in your life, like, you have to cultivate self-compassion. Because otherwise you'll just stay stuck. You'll just stay stuck hating yourself, beating yourself up, and you'll never get anywhere.
It's so real. My boyfriend and I have both been doing a lot of trauma healing work in ourselves lately, and the term that he came upon in one of the books that I gave him is the vicious critic, the voice of the vicious critic in your head. And boy, that critic is an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, like, no matter what you do, every accomplishment is cheapened or minimized or disregarded, and every failure is amplified to the nth degree, and every misstep and every, perceived flaw is just like magnified, and it's just really hard. And then you couple that with society being what it is, and trolls on the internet, and the fact that we have a dictator in the White House, and like, there's a lot going on right now.
There's a lot going on. I have done so much work around this, like silencing that critic, that vicious critic. And I must say, I don't hear it very much anymore.
That's awesome.
It's like, and when I do hear it, because I do still have a critic, it's not vicious. Something will pop up and I might kind of ignore it, so it'll get a little bit louder, and I might ignore it and then it'll get a little bit louder. And then I'm like, oh wait, what's this thought popping up in my head? Hey, you, like, get out of here. Like, I'm not, and it works. I mean, because I'm able to like catch it sooner, because it's all about like interrupting that thought pattern. You have to interrupt that voice, like, because pretending that it's not there, trying to pretend that it's not there, all you're doing is making it stronger. And it just gets more and more momentum, So what I always do is, and I tell my clients to do, is like, when that vicious critic opens its stupid mouth,
yeah,
you just say, like, first of all, you have compassion towards yourself for even having that thought in your head, because that makes you human, because we all do, having that voice. And then just say, like, maybe this is wrong. Even though I feel like this is right, even though I feel like it's true, I feel like I'm worthless, I feel like no one's ever going to love me, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not true.
Yes. Yeah.
And
fact checking is real.
Just because it's like, is it possible in some version of reality that thought is not true?
Mm-hmm.
Or that it's not always going to be true? Or what,
Yes.
like, just that possibility, starting to question that is so powerful.
It's so incredibly powerful. I love that you said that, because really that fact checking, just because X doesn't mean Y, in fact, Z.
Right.
So you get to have that moment of like, I don't believe that voice. I don't, F you, voice. And
yeah.
I actually read a thing on Twitter the other day that somebody was like, I just pretend my inner critic is Donald Trump, and then I just tell him to shut the fuck up. And that feels really good for me.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, well, I do tell people, I'm like, sometimes if it's like, give it a name.
Yeah, give it a name
of a name that to you represents someone really bitchy,
right?
really dumb, really fearful, like,
totally,
really like, give it that name. So yeah, hey,
yeah, some like annoying like waspy wife name, like Muffy, like fuck off, Muffy.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, Ashley, I am so grateful to have had this conversation with you today, and for you taking time out of your busy schedule. Can you please tell my listeners how they can get in touch with you, how they can work with you?
Absolutely.
All the good stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. I have not laughed this hard in a while, so this was just such a treat. You can find me on my website, which is cannasexual.com. That's CANNASEXUAL. You can also find me on Instagram at Cannasexual, on Twitter at Ashley Manta. And if you use my coupon code Cannasex on either slickwood.com or ForiaWellness.com, you will save 10%, which is pretty rad. I also have a coupon code with Sybian. Sybian is the rideable sex machine that like has been on Howard Stern. I work with them. They're amazing.
Oh, I know you do, because the last time I saw you,
yeah.
I took a ride on your sex machine.
That's right. You did. Well, I wasn't going to out you, so I'm glad that you outed yourself, because how was it? What did you think?
It was intense. I was only on it for like 45 seconds, and I was like, I can't take this. But I think it was because I was in a room full of people and all of that, so it was like too much. But I mean, it's intriguing.
It's like, pretty rad.
It's very intriguing, but
and it's expensive. And I realize that most people, you know, it's a big ticket item. So I have $100 off coupon.
Oh, amazing!
So,
it was like riding a bull, like a mechanical bull.
Yes.
Just with a different kind of seat.
Yes.
A different kind
with
of saddle.
A vibrator.
Yeah.
That has like a Harley motor.
God. Yeah. That thing made a lot of noise. It's
yeah. Oh my God. The owner of the house was like, what are you guys doing?
Why do you have a lawnmower in my living room?
He was so confused. He's like, what is happening right now? I'm like, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Sex toys.
See, you guys should come to Ashley's events, because these are the kinds of things that happen.
That's real. And now that I'm be living in Long Beach, there will be more accessible events, because I won't be the whole way down in San Diego.
Oh, good. Amazing. Amazing. Well, I thank you so much. I'm so happy to know you. And
likewise.
I'm just happy for the work that you're doing in the world, because you really are helping so many people, and it's so cool to see. And please follow Ashley. Check out her events. She has a vulva puppet. You got to see it for yourself.
Yes, I do.
She's going to teach you about your own anatomy, or the anatomy of the maybe the person that you have sex with, and also about yourself and your body and how to have more pleasure. And we all need that. Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Ashley. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you did, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast. I would so appreciate it. I'd also appreciate a rating and a review. Be sure to check the show notes for links to all of Ashley's social media and her website. You can stay in touch with me on all social media at Dear Franny, and you can follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Dear Franny Podcast. Wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for listening, and have a beautiful day. Bye.